The year is 2126. The place is the Interstellar Institute of Technology, a gleaming campus of glass towers and floating walkways, perched on the banks of the Hudson River about 30 miles north of New York City. Students from 100 different countries come here to study the farthest reaches of science, astrophysics, quantum biology, temporal mechanics. They come to understand the universe. But none of them understand the dark thing that waits just 2 miles away, on a hill covered in cherry blossoms that bloom in every season. Her name was Radha, and her classroom never closed. Our story begins on a crisp September afternoon. The holographic displays in Lecture Hall D were projecting a 3-dimensional map of the Milky Way, stars drifting lazily through the air like fireflies. 50 students sat in tired seats, tapping on tablets, whispering to each other, waiting for the professor to arrive. Maya Chen sat in the front row, as always. She was 20 years old, with sharp, dark eyes and black hair pulled into a tight ponytail. Her father was an astrophysicist. Her mother a quantum engineer. Science was in her blood. But so was something else. A restless curiosity, a hunger for the edges of knowledge, where the certainties of physics began to crack. To her right sat Ethan Vance, tall and analytical, his face a mask of calm reason. He was 21, a physics prodigy who had already published 2 papers on quantum decoherence. He believed only in data, in evidence, in things that could be measured and repeated, ghosts. He laughed at the idea. The supernatural was just a name for things science hadn't yet explained. To her left, sprawled in his chair with a lazy grin, was Liam Foster, 19, red-haired, the class clown. He collected old things, antique coins, vintage postcards, broken pocket watches. He was the heart of their little trio, the one who made everyone laugh even when things got dark. But right now, he was scrolling through his phone, looking bored. The door at the front of the lecture hall slid open. Dr. Mira Roy walked in. She was in her late 40s, with silver streaks in her black hair and a calm, unsettling way of moving, like a cat who knew things you didn't. She wore a white lab coat over a simple gray dress, and around her neck hung an old wristwatch that never ticked. Its hands were frozen at 11:59. Dr. Mira didn't look at her students. She walked to the holographic board, raised a hand, and the entire star map vanished. The room went dim. A single word appeared in glowing blue letters. Parallax. She turned to face them. Her voice was soft, but it carried into every corner of the room like a whisper in a quiet library. Time is not a line, she said. It is a river. And like any river, it has eddies, whirlpools, places where the current doubles back on itself. Ethan leaned toward Maya and muttered, "Here we go again." Maya elbowed him, without looking. "We call this phenomenon temporal parallax," Dr. Mira continued. "The moment when past, present, and future occupy the same space. Most physicists will tell you it's impossible." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "They are wrong." A few students shifted uncomfortably. Liam whispered to Ethan, "Is she always this creepy?" Ethan whispered back, "Only on days ending in E." Dr. Mira's eyes swept across the room. They lingered on Maya for a moment, just a fraction of a second longer than anyone else, before moving on. "There was an experiment," she said, "here, on this very river 102 years ago." Maya raised her hand. "Professor, are you talking about the Japanese cottage? The one on the hill?" Dr. Mira smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Yes, Maya, I am." A ripple of murmurs passed through the class. Everyone knew the cottage. It was a local landmark, a place where students went on weekends to take selfies under the cherry blossoms, to tell ghost stories, to pretend they were brave.
The old wooden building with the curved roof tiles and the bamboo water fountains that still trickled, even though no one had maintained them for a century. Sakura Shack, they called it. In 2024, Dr. Mira said, a Japanese physicist named Kenji Tanaka built a small research cottage on that hill. He wanted to prove that time could be folded like a sheet of paper. He brought his wife, Radha, who was also a brilliant scientist, and one night, he succeeded. Ethan frowned. He couldn't help himself. With respect, Professor, folding space-time requires exotic matter, negative energy density. In 2024, that was still theoretical. Dr. Mira turned to look at him. Her gaze was calm, almost pitying. Theoretical doesn't mean impossible, Mr. Vance. It means not yet explained. She turned back to the board and drew a simple diagram. 2 parallel lines, then one line folding back on itself like a hairpin. Kenji didn't open a portal, she said. He opened a crack, not in space, in time. And the crack didn't close. Liam, trying to lighten the mood, said, "So what happened? Did he fall through or something?" Dr. Mira's voice dropped lower. He vanished. Radha survived, but she was never the same. She began to see the dead, hear them, teach them. She turned that cottage into a school, a pause, a school for ghosts. The room went very quiet. Even the hum of the holographic projector seemed to fade. "Teach them what?" Maya asked. Dr. Mira looked at her for a long moment. The mathematics of murder, the chemistry of pain, the biology of fear. No one laughed. No one whispered. The air felt colder. Ethan, stubborn to the last, said, "And you believe this?" Dr. Mira picked up her tablet from the podium. "I don't have to believe it, Mr. Vance, I know it." She looked at him with eyes that had seen something old and terrible, because my grandmother was one of her students. The silence that followed was so deep you could hear the ventilation system humming. Then Dr. Mira said, "That's all for today. Read chapters 4 through 7. She walked toward the door, then stopped without turning around. She added, "And stay away from the hill." The door slid shut behind her. For a moment, no one moved. Then the chatter exploded. Nervous, excited, half-laughing students packed their bags and filed out, shaking their heads, telling each other it was just a story, just a spooky lecture to keep them interested. But Maya sat still. Her mind was turning, like a key in a lock. 20 minutes later, the 3 friends stood at the edge of the campus, looking up at the wooded hill that rose above the river. The sun was still high, but the trees cast long shadows and the air had a strange sweetness, the smell of cherry blossoms, even though it was September. "So," Liam said, hands on his hips, "let me get this straight. You want to go to the creepy cottage where a 100-year-old ghost runs a school for dead children?" Maya nodded yes. "Because your professor told you not to." "Because she told us to stay away," Maya corrected. "Which means she knows something, and I want to know what." Ethan adjusted his backpack. He had brought an EMF reader, a small device that measured electromagnetic fields, along with a notebook and a flashlight. "I'll go," he said.
but only to prove that it's nothing. Old buildings of creaky floors and weird sounds. That's not ghosts, that's physics. Liam threw his hands up. Fine. But when we get eaten by a kimono-wearing demon, I'm gonna say, I told you so from the afterlife. They started up the trail. The path was narrow and overgrown, bordered by ferns and moss-covered stones. The cherry trees grew thicker as they climbed, the branches meeting overhead to form a pink and white canopy. Petals drifted down like snow, even though there was no wind. Okay, Liam said, catching a petal. That's weird. How are they falling with no breeze? Gravity, Ethan said automatically. Gravity doesn't make petals swirl sideways. Ethan didn't answer.
After about 20 minutes, they reached the top of the hill. The cottage stood before them, smaller than they remembered, but somehow more alive. Its wooden walls were dark with age, but not rotten. The curved roof tiles were covered in moss that looked almost groomed. A small porch ran along the front, and on it sat 2 wooden benches that seemed freshly oiled. The cherry trees around the cottage were heavier with blooms than any of the others. The petals formed a thick carpet on the ground, pink and white and soft as cotton. Maya walked up to the front door. She tried the handle. It turned. "It's open," she said. "It's never open." "Maybe someone from the college maintains it after all," Ethan offered, but his voice lacked conviction. Liam pointed at the door frame. "Look at that, no dust, no cobwebs. This place has been cleaned." Maya pushed the door open. It swung inward without a sound. Inside, the cottage was larger than it appeared from outside. A long hallway stretched ahead, lined with sliding paper screens. To the left was a room with bamboo water fountains, and they were running. Water trickled over smooth stones into a shallow basin, clear and fresh. "That water has been flowing for 100 years, Maya said softly. "How?" Ethan pulled out his EMF reader. The display was steady, normal background levels. "No electromagnetic anomalies," he said. "But that doesn't make sense. There's no power line out here, no solar panels. The water should have evaporated decades ago." They walked deeper into the cottage. The floors were covered in tatami mats, woven straw, perfectly preserved. On the walls hung Japanese paintings, dragons coiled in clouds, samurai in battle, and one portrait of a beautiful woman in a white kimono holding a red ribbon. Her eyes seemed to follow them. "That's her," Maya breathed. "That's Radha." Liam pulled out his phone to take a picture. The screen flickered and went black. He pressed the power button. Nothing. "My phone's dead," he said. Ethan checked his mind too, and the EMF reader is spiking. He held up the device. The needle was jumping wildly far into the red zone. "This is off the scale. It's like standing next to a power plant." Maya's phone was also dead, but she didn't care. She was looking at the far end of the hallway where a staircase led up to the second floor. "Do you hear that?" she asked. They listened at first. Nothing. Then, faintly, from above, a melody. A music box playing a tune that was sweet and sad and somehow wrong, like notes played in the wrong order. Liam's face went pale. "That's the same song. I heard it before when we were outside." Ethan shook his head. There has to be a logical explanation. A wind-up toy left behind a recording. "From 100 years ago?" Maya asked. "Running on what battery?" No one answered.
They climbed the stairs. Each step creaked, but the creaks didn't sound like old wood. They sounded like whispers, like someone saying shh over and over. At the top of the stairs was a long hallway with 3 doors. The music was coming from the last door on the right. The EMF reader in Ethan's hand was screaming now, the needle pinned at maximum. Maya reached for the door handle. "Maya," Liam whispered, "maybe we shouldn't." "We came here to see," she said. "Let's see." She opened the door. It was a classroom. Wooden desks arranged in neat rows, a blackboard on the far wall covered in chalk writing. But the writing was in Japanese characters that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. A teacher's podium, with a leather-bound book open on it. And on the walls, photographs of children in old-fashioned uniforms. Boys and girls with solemn faces and eyes that seemed too large. "This is a school," Maya said. "A real school." Ethan stepped inside. His boots made no sound on the wooden floor. "The chalk is fresh," he said, running a finger over the blackboard. It left a white smear on his skin. "Someone wrote here today." "But there's no one here," Liam said. "No one alive, anyway." Anyway. The music box melody stopped. A child's giggle echoed from behind them. They spun around. A little girl stood in the doorway. She looked about 10 years old, with long black hair and a Japanese school uniform, blue skirt, white shirt, a red ribbon at her throat. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes had no pupils, just white. "You're new," she said. Her voice was sweet, but it echoed strangely as if she were speaking from the bottom of a well. "We don't get new students very often." Maya forced herself to stay calm. "Who are you?" "I'm Yumi." The girl smiled, revealing teeth that were too small, too sharp. "I've been here for 100 years almost." Ethan stepped forward, still clinging to reason. "That's not possible. You would be dead," Yumi finished. "Yes, I know. But Radha Sensei says death is just a different kind of class." Liam backed toward the window. "We should go right now." "But you just got here," Yumi said, tilting her head. "And Sensei will be so happy. She's been waiting for someone like you." Maya's blood went cold. "Someone like me? What does that mean?" Yumi opened her mouth to answer. But before she could speak, heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway, grown-up footsteps, deliberate, slow. Yumi stepped aside, and a woman entered the room. She was tall and beautiful, with long black hair and a white kimono embroidered with crimson flowers. Her face was the same as the portrait downstairs, but her eyes were different. Not empty, but burning like coals, like dying stars. She held an old book in one hand, its leather cover cracked and faded. "Yumi," the woman said. Her voice was deep and calm, with a faint Japanese accent. "You didn't tell me we had guests." "They just arrived. Sensei, I was about to call you." The woman, Radha, turned her gaze on the 3 friends. Her smile was gentle, almost maternal, and that made it more terrifying than any snarl. "Welcome," she said. "It has been so long since the living found their way to my classroom." She walked slowly around the teacher's podium, running her fingers over the leather book. "Do you know why you are here?" "We were just curious," Maya said. "We didn't mean to intrude." Radha laughed. A soft, sad sound no one means to intrude, but curiosity is a door, and you opened it. Ethan pulled out his EMF reader, but the screen was black dead. He shook it, nothing. This isn't real. You're a hologram, some kind of advanced projection. Radha looked at him with pity. Believe what you wish, young man, but tell me, your little machine there, the one that measures fields, what does it say? Ethan looked at the dead display. It's not working. That's because the field is too strong, Radha said. I am not a hologram. I am not a myth. I am the keeper of the crack, and you three have been chosen. Liam's voice cracked. Chosen for what? Radha set the book on the podium. A game. The only game I know. She paused. The hunt. Maya stepped forward, her fists clenched. We don't want to play. Radha's smile never wavered. That's the thing about my classroom. Maya, no one wants to play, but everyone does. She raised her hand behind them. The classroom door slammed shut. A heavy iron lock clicked into place. Ethan ran to the door and tried to force it open. It didn't budge. It's locked from the outside, he said, his voice tight. How? Because I don't want you to leave, Radha said. Not yet. She walked toward the blackboard and picked up a piece of chalk. You see, the crack needs a new keeper. It has been 100 years. I am tired. She began to write on the board. Not Japanese this time, but English, large, looping letters. One of you will stay, the other two may go. Liam read the words aloud, his voice shaking. And if we refuse? Radha turned to face them. For a moment, her gentle mask slipped, and they saw what lay beneath. Something ancient, hungry, and utterly without mercy. Then none of you go, and the game becomes less pleasant. Less pleasant.
The room grew colder. The shadows in the corners deepened. And from the walls they heard whispers, dozens of voices, young and old, speaking in languages they didn't recognize. Maya's mind raced. She looked at Radha, really looked at her. Not as a monster, but as a problem to be solved. What if we find a way to close the crack? She said, permanently. Then you wouldn't need a keeper. Radha stopped writing. She stared at Maya for a long, silent moment. Then she laughed. A genuine laugh, warm and surprised. That would require going into the basement. The original classroom, the place where Kenji opened the crack. Her smile faded. And no one who has gone down there has ever come back. Ethan stepped up beside Maya. Then we'll be the first. Radha studied them both. Then she nodded slowly. Confidence, I like it. She set down the chalk and folded her hands. Very well, I will give you 3 days. Find the basement, seal the crack. If you succeed, you all go free. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If you fail, one of you stays with me forever. She snapped her fingers. A clock began to tick, loud, slow, menacing. It came from everywhere and nowhere, filling the room like a heartbeat. Your time starts now, Radha said. The door unlocked with a sharp click. Liam didn't wait. He grabbed Maya's arm and yanked her toward the door. Ethan followed, his long legs eating up the distance. They burst out of the classroom, down the stairs, through the hallway, and out the front door, running, not stopping until they were 100 yards down the hill, gasping for breath in the fading afternoon light. They collapsed on the grass at the edge of the campus. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The cherry blossoms on the hill looked like a distant pink cloud, beautiful and harmless. Liam was the first to speak. Did that really happen? Tell me that didn't really happen. Ethan held up his EMF reader. It was working again, normal levels, steady as a rock. It happened. He said quietly, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it happened. Maya looked at her hand. Her palm was tingling. She turned it over and gasped. A small black mark was forming on her skin, a spiral like a fingerprint, but dark as ink. It was spreading slowly up toward her wrist. What is that? Liam asked. Looking at his own hands, he had the same mark, so did Ethan, all three of them. She marked us, Maya said. She marked us so she can find us. Ethan ran his fingers over the mark. It didn't hurt, but it felt warm, unnaturally warm. It's probably a chemical reaction, some kind of dye. We should wash our hands. Maya grabbed his wrist. Ethan, stop. Stop what? Stop pretending. This is science, you can explain. You saw her, you heard her, you felt the cold in that room. She looked him in the eyes. She's real. Ethan opened his mouth to argue. Then he closed it. For the first time since Maya had known him, he had nothing logical to say. Liam sat up, brushing grass off his jeans. So what do? We have 3 days. Maya stood up, her legs were still shaking, but her voice was steady. We go back to the college. We find Dr. Mira. She knows more than she told us. She said her grandmother was a student there. She might know how to get into that basement. And if she doesn't? Ethan asked. Maya looked up at the hill. The cottage was just a dark shape now, silhouetted against the sunset, but she could have sworn she saw a light in the upstairs window, a blue light watching. Then we figure it out ourselves, she said. Because I am not letting either of you stay in that place if anyone stays. It's me. Liam stood up and put a hand on her shoulder. No one's staying. We're getting out of this together. Ethan nodded. Together. They walked back to the campus in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. The black marks on their hands throbbed faintly, like a second heartbeat. And high on the hill, in the window of the old Japanese cottage, a little girl in a school uniform watched them go. She smiled, showing her 2 sharp teeth. The game has begun, Yumi whispered to the darkness. And Radha Sensei always wins. That night, Maya lay in her dorm room, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Radha's face, that gentle, terrible smile. She heard the ticking of the clock. She looked at her hand. The black mark had spread to her wrist. It didn't hurt, but it pulsed with a faint heat, like a tiny coal under her skin. Her phone buzzed. It text from Ethan. Can't sleep either. Researching Kenji Tanaka. Found something, meet me in the library at 7 a.m. She typed back, I'll be there. Then she rolled over and tried to close her eyes. But before she could drift off, she heard something, faint, distant, coming from the direction of the hill. A music box, playing the same sweet, sad, wrong melody. And underneath it, barely audible,
A child's voice singing in Japanese. Come to class, come to class. The teacher is waiting. The crack is hungry. And the game is just beginning. Maya pulled the blanket over her head and squeezed her eyes shut. But the singing didn't stop. It went on all night, soft as a lullaby, cold as a grave.